3 spine-chilling childhood memories, unexplained horrors exposed in terrifying detail. The darkness crept in slowly, wrapping itself around Sarah's heart like a snake squeezing the life from its prey. Her pulse quickened as dread flooded the quiet suburban streets. The attic door, often a mere threshold to forgotten memories, morphed into a portal of fears left unspoken. She remembered tales from her childhood, stories of unspeakable horrors hiding in the shadows, lurking where children dared not tread. The time when the nightmares began, when the whispers slithered from the walls. Now, it was Lily and Ethan who felt the grip of fear. There were moments when the children would wake screaming, their eyes wide with terror, recounting dreams of children from the past, missing kids whose bright eyes glimmered like drowned stars. Wandering spirits that sealed themselves in unseen corners of their home. Windows rattled, shadows flickered, something wanted out. Sarah's heart raced as she returned home from another exhausting shift at the hospital, each moment weighed down by worry. She could hear shuffling somewhere in the house. The attic door stood ajar, the unmistakable chill seeping through the crack, beckoning her closer. She hesitated. What lay beyond that door? Memories of local legends spun through her mind, the old tales of children who vanished without a trace, hunted lives lost in the quiet corners of a neighborhood that wore its secrets like a well-loved coat. Before she could move, she heard it, a whisper woven from the threads of the darkness, scratching like nails against glass. It was coming from the attic. Panic surged through her veins, igniting the instincts she honed as a mother. As cold sweat formed on her brow, she realized her children were in there. She rushed to the door, heart pounding, breath caught in her throat. "Kids," she exclaimed, thrusting the door wide open. The scene before her felt unreal. Lily and Ethan huddled together, their faces pale, entranced by something unseen. The air crackled with unease, their innocent fear palpable. "What's going on?" she demanded, her voice trembling. They turned to her, caught in a moment of indecision. "Mom," Lily whispered, "the friend in the attic says we can play forever." Ethan's voice quivered, "They don't want to be alone." A chill drafted through her bones, a sinister realization struck her: there was no friend in the attic. It was wrong. They were playing with ghosts trapped in the echoes of the lost. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The darkness deepened, and the whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a storm. Shadows darted through the corners of her vision, but when she turned, nothing was there. Her heart drummed a frantic rhythm, terror clawing at her insides. Ethan clutched Lily's hand tighter, their knuckles white, eyes wide. The thought of Mr. Wilkins burrowed into her mind, his offers of help now feeling incriminating. Could the sweet old man, with his nostalgic tales and gentle demeanor, be a thread to this tapestry of fears? She imagined him standing just behind her, smiling that unnaturally knowing smile, his crinkled eyes hiding untold stories, shadows slipping beneath the surface. "Let us go," she urged, and as she turned to lead them back downstairs, something cold slithered across her skin, a silent warning. Suddenly, the attic door swung shut with a deafening slam, plunging them into darkness. Sarah's breath hitched as something echoed from above, the snap of a twig, a footstep perhaps too light to belong to this world. She gathered her children close, adrenaline surging. They were not alone. The air around them thickened, suffocating her. "Mom, I don't want to play anymore," Lily whimpered. "They won't let me." Something shifted in the shadows above, and Sarah stood paralyzed, teetering dangerously on the brink between dread and revelation. The unspoken horrors loomed. Did she dare confront the malevolent force watching from the darkness? In this moment, she faced a choice, a chilling juncture filled with uncertainty, staring into the abyss. Was she strong enough to unveil the truth, or would the whispers from the attic draw her in, silencing her forever? Terror seeped through the air like a miasma, wrapping around Sarah and her children. Her pulse echoed in her ears, drowning out the whispers that bounced around the attic. What had begun as a rush of maternal courage was now a steady trickle of dread. The shadows quivered and danced, teasing at the edges of perception, daring her to step closer. "Mom, please," Ethan's voice wavered, a whimper woven with despair. Lily eyed the door desperately. "I want to go home, Mom." Their sanctuary felt hostile, the walls closing in around them. The attic wasn't just a space filled with forgotten toys or dusty mementos, it felt alive, twisting with the stories of the lost. Shadows deepened, and Sarah could almost hear the cries of children long forgotten, pleading, searching for recognition. In a moment of steeled resolve, she grabbed her children's hands. "Stay close to me," she whispered, her words barely cutting through the oppressive murk. She began to move toward the far end of the attic, the floorboards creaking beneath their feet like the moans of the house protesting their intrusion. Each step echoed the heartbeat thrumming in her chest. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. A bone-chilling wind surged past, enough to send chills racing down her spine. The whispers morphed into an unsettling symphony, now full of laughter that twisted into something sinister. It filled her with an all-encompassing fear that gripped her throat like a vice. "What do you want?" she called out, her voice trembling. A part of her was sure she wouldn't get an answer, the other half wasn't sure she wanted one. Lily tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, the friend says we have to play. She wants to play for a long time." It didn't sound like a game anymore. The thought wormed its way into her mind. Who was this friend? What did it mean? Digging deep, she steadied herself against the weight of the shifting shadows. "No more games!" Sarah shouted into the void. "We're leaving." At that moment, a torrent of movement exploded from the far corner. Clothes hangers clattered violently, an unseen force brushed past her shoulder, icy and mocking. Her heart raced as she spun around. A figure took shape and darkened against the flickering attic light, a child, pale and hollow-eyed, with a face that could only belong to one of the missing. The moment froze. Its eyes bore into her, pleading yet demanding, as if deciding whether she was friend or foe. "Why are you here?" It rasped, the words dusty and fragmented. Terror pulsed through her, pushing her instincts to fight or flee. But her children were behind her, their fear palpable, saturating the air. We didn't come to hurt you," she stammered, desperate for any connection in this swirling madness. "We just want to leave." The specter's face transformed, anger flickered like lightning across its features, illuminating the emptiness within. "You can't leave," it wailed, voice echoing, filling the attic with raw emotion. Ethan squeezed Lily's hand, and she felt him trembling. Fear turned into something darker, more potent, as thin fingers brushed against her back, a chilling promise of a reckoning. Sarah tore her gaze away from the apparition, frantically searching her memories for anything that could anchor her to reality. The stories her mother told, the warnings, the histories. She felt every hair on her body stand on end. "What do you want?" she asked again, throat tight. "Why are you trapped here? Play with us." The whispers rose, flooding back to her with urgency. The walls thrummed, sending an unsettling vibration through her bones. Sarah looked at her children, their wide eyes reflecting both her fear and innocence. They were her priority, she needed to protect them. But how could she wrestle with something as ethereal as a child's ghost, or worse, an unspeakable force that thrived on despair? Suddenly, a fleeting thought struck her. What if she could turn this game against them? "If we play, can you let us go?" she heard herself say, every word heavy with trepidation. Silence hung thick in the air, punctuated only by the frenzied beating of her heart. Could she outsmart the darkness? Was she willing to risk it all to save her children? Forever came the chorus of whispers, a response both eerie and tantalizing. A creeping dread settled in her stomach. Would forever be their doom, or could it be the key to freedom? As the shadows coalesced, inching closer, Sarah's mind raced, poised on the brink of decisions that could seal their fate. They stood at the edge of an unfathomable abyss, and she felt time slip away. What had she done? And as the whispers wrapped around them like a noose, she realized one chilling truth: nothing would ever be the same again. Was this the moment she unleashed something far darker? Or could she find a way to save her children before the attic claimed them forever? The shadows melted together, weaving an intricate tapestry of dread that enveloped Sarah and her children. Each heartbeat was a countdown, urging them to act before the night consumed them whole. The laughter hung in the air, rich with malice, clawing at the edges of her sanity. "Mom, I don't want to play." Ethan's voice cracked, framing his fear. Lily clung tighter to his arm, her small frame shaking like a leaf in a storm. They were standing on the precipice of something sinister, a place where innocence met darkness. "Just a game," Sarah said, forcing strength into her words, though doubt gnawed at her resolve. Any rational part of her screamed to run, to leave everything behind. But a deeper instinct wouldn't allow it. She had to protect them. "Just a game," she repeated, hoping the phrase would cradle them in safety. Suddenly, the attic shifted and stirred underfoot as if the floorboards were breathing. Dust particles caught in the dim light hung in the air like trapped souls, suspended in a grim eternity. From the corner of her eye, Sarah saw movement: a flutter of fabric, a glint of eyes. The figures gathered closer, specters of children, eyes hollow, faces twisted in desperation. "Join us!" they chorused in eerie unison. Their voices melted together, a cacophony that echoed, turning her heart to ice. "Mom?" Lily's whisper broke through the chaos, penetrating the veil of her own terror. "What if they don't let us go?" Sarah said, gritting her teeth, pulling her children closer. "Remember that nightlight? It can't hurt us if we stick together. Just like the stories." But this was no story. This was the twisted nightmare that lived in the back of her mind. A world where games ended not with laughter, but with screams. "Why are you here?" The pale child from before, the one with sunken cheeks and hollow eyes, rasped once more. "You must play or stay forever." A chill coiled into Sarah's stomach, tight and cold, as the gravity of their choice settled over them. "What do you want us to play?" It felt like a trap, but she had to keep the focus away from her children, away from the gathering storm. "Mother, may I?" came the eerie reply, their voices dripping with warped sweetness. "What if we just don't play?" Sarah ventured, a desperate plea spilling from her lips. "We'll just go home. We promise." But hands reached out, translucent fingers brushing against her, sending an electric jolt of terror through her veins. "You can't leave. You have to play!" shrieked the shadows, their eyes burning with a hungry intensity, darkness pulling tighter around them. "Mom! I can't breathe!" Ethan gasped, looking like a candle flickering in strong winds. "Stay close. Just don't look at them," Sarah commanded, but her voice trembled, infused with the fear coursing through her body. She felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her, scrutinizing, judging, waiting. The air shifted, thickening with a malevolent presence. Fear dripped and dribbled in the silence, vibrant and raw. Colors drained into murky shades as the room swirled. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed. A doorway swung open somewhere deep within the attic, revealing a shimmering portal filled with dark light. Those ghostly children hovered at its threshold, faces twisted with excitement and dread. "Join us," they pleaded, clearly bound to this realm of torment, rage, and sorrow. "Mom, please. I want to go home," Lily cried, the desperation in her voice striking a chord in Sarah's heart. "Play with us. You'll never be alone," echoed the chilling promise. The universe held its breath. Sarah's heart raced with palpable dread. In this critical moment, a decision lay heavy before her, the possibility of braving their game while risking everything for the chance to escape. Maybe, she whispered, a plan forming in her mind, maybe we will play. If it means we can go home. But as she spoke, the shadows trembled. Did she really mean it? With dark laughter spiraling into the air, the children surged forward, their distorted forms blending into the shadows around them. Frigid air surrounded her, and instinct screamed that this was a moment of reckoning. What had she truly agreed to? And as she felt the shadows close in, Sarah understood this game would change everything. But could they play long enough to outsmart the haunting that awaited them? Before she could consider the consequences, a blinding flash of light erupted from the doorway, bathing them all in its ominous glow. What lay beyond? The answer loomed ahead, beckoning them deeper into the abyss. Would they dare take the first step? The blinding light enveloped them, but Sarah felt an unnatural chill slice through the warmth of its brief radiance. The echoes of laughter faded, replaced by a heavy silence that weighed down like smoke. What lived in the dark waited, hungry and restless, for their next move. "Mom, I feel sick," Ethan's voice trembled, breaking the eerie stillness. His face was pale, and his eyes were wide, reflecting the uncertainty that swirled around them like a potent fog. "Just hold on, sweetheart," she urged, scanning the edges of the luminous doorway. "We'll find a way out. We just have to play their game, whatever it is." The shadowy figures danced just beyond the doorway, their forms flickering like candle flames, ever so inviting, yet sinister. It beckoned them with whispers sweetened by deceiving innocence, the promise of fun twisted into a snare. "Do you have a better plan?" she whispered to her children, eyes darting between the shimmering light and the spectral children who hovered like dark clouds, ready to engulf them. "No. But I don't want to play," Lily whimpered, her small fingers tightening around Ethan's arm. Sarah felt the knot of worry in her stomach tighten further. The children were right, the thought of deeper involvement terrified her, but the darkness lurked just outside their field of vision, a predator hungry for their fear. "We can't just stay here," Sarah said, more to convince herself than them. She took a deep breath, steadying her shaking hands, then stepped toward the portal. "If we have to play, let us do this together." As they approached, the light pulsed rhythmically, casting erratic shadows. There was no turning back. The figures in the doorway started to blur, mixing in with the darkness around them. They were waiting, watching. "Mother, may I?" The soothing, eerie voice of the pale child drifted from the shadows. "Please, let us play." With one last glance at her children, Sarah took a step through the threshold, heart hammering in her chest. The moment she crossed, it felt like a weight had shifted, gravity tugging harder against her as the world warped around her. Suddenly, they stood in a distorted version of their living room, yet it felt wrong. The walls closed in on them, windows cracked, shadows darting behind curtains that fluttered without the wind. Ethan clutched Lily protectively, shivering in the sudden chill permeating the air. "Where are we?" Ethan whispered, each word a fragile breath. "Shoo. Just stay close," Sarah said, her voice hardening with resolve. She surveyed the space, dread creeping under her skin like fingers brushing against her neck. "This is their version of the game. We need to find the rules." Their surroundings seemed alive, pulsating with a darker energy, as if the house itself held memories, veins throbbing with fear and pain. The walls seemed to pulse, echoing a heartbeat that reverberated through her bones. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision. "Find the clues," the pale child's voice echoed from nowhere, weaving through the very fibers of the space around them. It was a challenge. "You're in the game now." Fear electrified the air, sweat trickling down Sarah's back. "What does that mean?" she shouted, the panic rising. Her children began to tremble, the playfulness of a simple game twisting into a nightmare woven from their deepest fears. A series of echoes rang through the warped living room, and shadows formed into distorted shapes, familiar but alien, lost in the shifting light. "Mom! What are we playing?" Lily cried, the innocence of her voice juxtaposing the horrifying atmosphere spiraling around them. Mother, may I?" Sarah glanced at the shadows, now swarming closer, laughter mixing into the very air they breathe. "We've got to finish it. We'll take it one step at a time." "Take a step forward," the shadows sang, urging them on, aware of the pact binding them to this twisted game. Sarah took a deep breath, determination stealing in her heart. "Okay." One step forward, but as she moved, she felt the air shift. Shadows reached out, clutching at her ankle, pulling her back towards the door. "Just a game," echoed cruelly around them, twisting her resolve. She realized then, their very lives were at stake. Would they survive their turn in this dreadful ring of childhood games? As the laughter grew louder, Sarah's thoughts raced. What if the only scores they kept were the scars on their souls? With every ounce of strength, she turned to her children, whispering fiercely, "We'll finish this. We have to." But as their feet moved forward, a chilling realization washed over her. What if they played too well? In the depths of the shadows, a terrible choice lay waiting. Would the game end, or would somehow, somewhere, the game change them forever? As they took their first agonizing steps into the warped living room, the air thickened, a choking dread wrapping around them. Shadows slithered, whispering promises and threats, their voices entwined, crescendoing into chaotic harmony. Each laugh reverberated like a distant echo of their own childhood, twisted and distorted. The past seemed to bleed into the present. "Focus, kids," Sarah urged, trying to sound brave despite the gnawing anxiety clutching her heart. Every step felt like wading through molasses, the floor beneath them hollow and unsteady, threatening to swallow them whole. "We have to find something, anything that can help us get out." The pale shadows flickered closer, heartbeats echoing in a rhythm that matched her own escalating panic. Through the murky gloom, familiar objects peeked back at them, but now they seemed off-kilter. The coffee table distorted, its surface rippling like water, while the oddly skewed couches leaned closer, as though eager to eavesdrop on their despair. "I don't like it here," Lily whimpered, eyes darting, tears glistening as she clung tighter to Ethan. "Me neither," Ethan whispered, a tremor in his voice. Tension draped around them like a shroud. Sarah pushed her fear down, remembering the conditions of the game. They needed clues. "Let us look," she insisted, forcing her feet to shuffle forward. Each movement elicited sounds that shouldn't exist, soft giggles intertwined with the heavy thud of her heart. Suddenly, the shadows hissed, curling around their ankles like cobwebs, luring them deeper. They flickered wildly, eliciting flashes of images: a birthday party, laughter, and the taste of cake mingled with distant memories. It sickened her stomach. These were not just shadows, they were remnants of lost joy, dragging them under. A soft chime tinkled like a distant bell. Sarah turned her head, her breath catching as her eyes snagged on a glimmering object on the floor. A small pocket watch lay abandoned, swinging softly despite the absence of motion around it. Instinctively, she reached down for it, its metal cold and heavy in her palm. "What is that, Mom?" Ethan's voice quivered. "I don't know," she answered, though she could feel in her bones that it was important. The watch ticked steadily, a steady heartbeat in a world bereft of life. "Looks like it's counting." "Counting down," Lily whispered, pointing a trembling finger at the watch. Sarah's heart raced. "What happens when it reaches 0? The laughter of the shadows echoed around them, a chorus laced with malice. "Soon, soon," they taunted, their words wrapping around Sarah's mind like a vice. Panic surged through her veins. "We need to hurry," she urged, gripping the pocket watch, a desperate lifeline against the encroaching darkness. But as she looked up to lead her children, the walls of the living room began to constrict, closing in like a vice. "Mom! It won't fit," Ethan cried, looking back at the narrowing space. "Just keep moving," Sarah shouted, pushing the fear back down, forcing herself to focus. The shadows loomed larger, threatening to engulf them, their cold laughter climbing to a near-piercing pitch. Just then, a burst of strength surged through her, and Sarah wheeled around, her voice fierce in the chaos. "What do we need to do to win?" What are the rules? Silence followed, a deep, suffocating silence, before the shadows slowly replied, "Play with us or be part of the game forever." The pocket watch trembled violently in her hand, each tick stabbing through the air, pulling them deeper into the abyss. Fear had a taste metallic, rich, terrible. They were running out of time. "Mom, let us go," Ethan urged. But just as they turned, the walls slid away, revealing another corridor, a darker passage filled with echoes of their childhood taunts and muffled screams. With her heart pounding, Sarah clutched the watch, her resolve hardening. They had to face this. To find the rules, they had to dig deeper. "Follow me," she commanded, leading them into the dark. Each step echoed with the madness of the shadows. Sarah knew the game was unraveling faster than they could handle. But as they raced down the corridor, an even deeper dread gnawed at her stomach. Somewhere in this nightmare, a sinister truth awaited them, a truth that might shatter their very souls. What lay at the other end of this dark passage? What would they have to sacrifice to escape? The clock was ticking, and they were running out of time. The corridor stretched endlessly, its walls a filthy black, pulsating with darkness. Shadows writhed and twisted up high, eager tendrils reaching toward them, trying to pull them back into their suffocating grip. Sarah felt her heartbeat thrumming in her ears, a frantic rhythm that begged her not to stop. "Are you sure this way is right?" Ethan's voice trembled, little more than a whisper. "It has to be," Sarah said, her own uncertainty gnawing at her as they pressed onward. She could feel the pocket watch growing colder in her palm. The ticking had quickened, each tick echoing like a countdown to catastrophe. They stumbled forward, disoriented and dizzy, the walls sinking in, closing off their escape. She pushed her children ahead of her, a protective barrier against the encroaching dread, but their tiny, frightened forms felt less like children and more like weights dragging her down. Terror settled thick in the space between them and the darkness, thicker than the air they gasped for. "Mom, look!" Lily pointed to a door at the far end of the hall, its edges glowing faintly, a beckoning light promising safety or revealing another horror. "Stay close," Sarah barked, anxiety sharpening her voice. As they hurried toward the door, the sounds of laughter twisted into shrieks that clawed at their sanity. Inside her mind, the echoes of memory whispered, reminding Sarah of a childhood game played in the dimly lit hallways of their old home. The laughter distorted, an invitation that turned haunting in her mind. The walls felt alive, alive with their past, the laughter of children warped into a cacophony of despair. "What if it's a trap?" Ethan's voice cracked, and shadows loomed closer, seeming hungry for their fear. "It can't be worse than this," she replied, feeling the truth whispering like a cold wind. Was she leading them to safety or into a deeper nightmare? Lily reached the door first, hesitating before turning the knob slowly, dread pooling thick in her eyes. An echo of familiarity washed over Sarah. This door looked like one from their childhood home, dusty and worn. A wave of nostalgia struck her, intertwining with dread. As the door creaked open, a rush of cold air spilled out, slapping them with the smell of decay. They peered inside. The room was alive with a whirling mist, shadows landing both comfortingly and sinisterly, swirling through the remnants of forgotten items, toys half buried beneath dust, a rocking chair eerily still, as if waiting for a child's ghostly form to return. Suddenly, darkness exploded in the corner, forming into shapes, pale faces glittering with mockery, eyes large and soulless. They stared out from within the shadows, mouths moving, twisting into caricatures of laughter. "Welcome, welcome!" First one shadow, then another chimed in, their voices merging into a haunting lullaby. "Don't listen," Sarah barked, the words feeling like nails against the surface of her raw fear. She pulled her children closer, heart pounding as dread clung to the edges of her vision. "What do we do, Mom?" Ethan pleaded, his voice trembling, eyes glistening with tears. In that moment, Sarah remembered what the shadows had said. "Play with us or be part of the game forever." Panic clawed her throat. The game had already begun, hadn't it? What were they playing exactly? As if sensing her thoughts, the shadows lifted and twisted, revealing a scroll unfurling in midair. Words flickered into view, sinister and bold. Sacrifice will win the game. It hung there, taunting them. Sacrifice? Sarah's breath caught. The realization crashed over her like ice water. What would they have to give up to escape? Time blinked, and the pocket watch slipped from her grasp, crashing to the floor. The shadows recoiled, and with a sudden fury, the ticking ceased. The echoes of laughter turned into a roar, shadows rushing forward to engulf them. "Mom!" Lily screamed, her voice piercing through the chaos, mixing tears with despair. With adrenaline coursing through her, Sarah lunged for the door, but the shadows crawled forward, whispering darker truths, squeezing their grip around her children. Each heartbeat reverberated in the horror, pulling them tightly. "Mom, help!" Ethan cried, as Sarah stood, rooted to the spot by the shadowy figures gathering around her, their faces morphing into twisted reflections of her children. She had to save them. But how? The air grew colder, thick with the scent of desperation. What was the true cost of escape? The clock had run out. In the depths of her mind, she felt the walls closing in again. As fear threatened to consume her, she knew that beyond this door lay a revelation that could shatter everything she believed to be true. "Which of you will sacrifice?" The shadows whispered in unison, their voices a grotesque harmony echoing her deepest fears as the darkness threatened to swallow them whole. The game was far from over, but the end loomed ever closer. The shadows surged forward, their features distorting with each movement, dripping malice as they echoed Sarah's own dread. The flickering scroll still hung in the air, a cruel reminder of the game they had stumbled into. "Which of you will sacrifice?" The question twisted in her mind, snaking around her heart like a vice. "Get away from them!" Sarah shouted, raw fear fueling her desperation. She reached for Lily and Ethan, her hands trembling, as the darkness coiled tighter, their laughter rattling her bones, but before she could pull them back, the shadows lunged. They latched onto Ethan's tiny arms, dragging him toward the inky depths. "Mom!" he screamed, terror shaking him. The cries cut through Sarah, igniting a primal instinct to fight back. "Let him go!" She charged forward, pushing away the shadows that felt like ice against her skin. With a fierce shove, she tore him free, but the dark figures recoiled and spun, their collective eyes narrowing into slits. "Give us what we want," they hissed, their voices now a chorus of eerie seduction, swirling like smoke around her. "What do you want?" Sarah spat, breathless. Children's laughter, sweet and untainted, the shadows swayed hypnotically, a twisted serpentine dance. "Or one of your own?" Lily trembled, wide-eyed, clutching her brother's side. "Mom, what do they mean?" The shadows responded, elongating their shadows, becoming grotesque shapes of pleading children, faces caught in an eternal plea, mouthing desperate words. The sight threatened to tear at the fabric of Sarah's sanity. "No! I want to let you take them!" she cried, her voice barely a whisper now, lost against the thick fog of despair. The memories of their laughter echoed in her head, moments of joy swiftly turning to agonizing pressure. With a surge of adrenaline, she pushed her children behind her. "We want to play your game. We want to." But the shadows merely laughed, their sounds a harmony of buried secrets and forgotten fears. "Every choice has a price. Choose wisely," they sang, their voices intertwining, echoing through the claustrophobic room. A deep chasm of silence thundered in the air. Then, without warning, the horrors shifted. The darkness pulled back like a curtain, revealing a long-forgotten nursery filled with dust and remnants of a childhood destroyed. Crib bars stood skewed, wallpaper peeled with age, and a dark stain marked what might have been a once innocent playroom. Unexpected tears stung Sarah's eyes as fragmented memories surged. Lily's first words, Ethan's silly dance moves, laughter echoing through their old home. The shadows seemed to twist and flicker like candlelight, drawing on her sorrow, a source of strength they could feed on. "Play with us," they echoed, their whispers now a tantalizing plea woven with deceptive sweetness. Enough! Sarah yelled, panic propelling her into action. The air buzzed and crackled with electricity, as if the room itself had come alive. She needed to confront them. If she could just break through their hold, she might protect her children. "Mom!" came Lily's voice, soft yet strong, pulling Sarah back. In that moment, she glanced at her daughter and son, their faces pale and worried, yet they stood together unbreakable in their bond. "Hold on to each other!" Sarah shouted, grabbing their hands tightly. They formed a chain, a line of resistance against the encroaching shadows. The dark figures writhed in agitation. "You will lose what you cherish most," they hissed, fangs bared, as the room shifted, the walls contracting, breathing like a living creature. "Not today." Sarah's voice held a fierce determination. If it meant facing her fears, she had to make them manifest. She had to summon enough strength to fight against the darkness. With a deep breath, she yelled into the void, "We choose each other." In that instant, the shadows recoiled and shrieked, the room swirling like a tempest around them. The air thickened, crackling with danger. Something ancient and powerful stirred, the true essence of the game awakening. But a swift realization struck Sarah. What if the shadows were right? What if their sacrifices weren't just a choice but an inevitability? The shadows whispered dark promises as they encircled them once more, pulling tighter until the air thinned and everything grew still but for the frantic heartbeat of her children. And then, as if severed from reality, Sarah plunged into darkness, feeling the world spin out of her grasp, the very fabric of their reality tearing apart. "Yes, we will see what you are willing to give," echoed the sinister voices, a cacophony of predatory anticipation. Was she fighting to save them or sealing their fate? The darkness swallowed them whole, leaving a heavy silence in its wake, and Sarah's heart raced with dread. What awaited them in the abyss? Because the game had only just begun. An icy grip settled around Sarah's throat, cutting off a scream before it could escape. The void consumed her, an oppressive weight that pressed against her chest, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat. It felt like eternity, the shadows swirling around them, eroding her sense of time and reality. She blinked, trying to gather her thoughts, but all she could perceive were whispers and taunts, echoing through the abyss. The darkness felt alive, breathing against her skin, thrumming with malicious energy. But more unsettling was the sensation that they were being watched, by unseen eyes lurking just beyond her field of vision. Then, out of the dark, shapes began to emerge. Faint outlines flickered like broken memories. She recognized them, the pale faces of children warped by sorrow, their eyes hollow and pleading. "Help us," they murmured, their voices like a chill wind. A wave of heartbreaking familiarity washed over her, both inviting and repulsive. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice trembling as she tightened her grip on her children. "Lost," they echoed, unsettling smiles twisting their lips. "We are lost like you." Ethan shivered beside her, pressing closer into Sarah's side. "Mom, I don't like this place," he whimpered, his small fingers digging into her waist, grounding him in reality. "Neither do I, baby," she whispered, feeling panic spark in her gut. "But we're going to find a way out." She needed to keep him strong, keep him safe. The shadows recoiled briefly, retreating to the outskirts, only to surge back and loom closer. "Running away is futile," they hissed. "To escape the game, you must play." Their voices blended together, turning into a monstrous chant that rattled Sarah's bones. Suddenly, the darkness shifted again, blurring and twisting, revealing scenes from a distant past, her own childhood. A swing set swayed under a pale moonlight, laughter echoing sweetly like a siren's call. A blurry figure of a girl darted past, her hair flying like ribbons in the wind. "Join us," the shadows cooed, the promise tantalizing yet horrid. Sarah's mind raced, haunting memories surfacing like ghosts. She recalled afternoons spent in the gravelly grass, picnics with laughter ringing true, before the darkness came creeping in and snatched away the joy. "No!" Sarah shouted, recoiling from the betrayal of those memories. She didn't want to return there, the place where shadows awaited, feasting on her innocence. We aren't here to play. But the shadows laughed, their voices mingling with wails of anguish. You're already playing. Can you not feel it? You've forgotten what it's like to set them free, Mom. What do they mean? Lily asked, her voice edged with fear. It's a trick. Sarah snapped, forcing herself to maintain composure. In the back of her mind, seeds of doubt began to take root. Could she really escape? Or were the shadows correct? Was she destined to sacrifice something precious? With a surge of determination, Sarah grasped her children's hands tighter, feeling their warmth. We stand together. We face this as a family. She declared, her voice ringing with fierce conviction despite the fear clawing at her insides. The shadows recoiled again, momentarily disoriented by her boldness. You think this can save you? They twisted and squirmed, their forms turning grotesque, as if her defiance angered them. Sacrifice awaits, they hissed, as the darkness danced menacingly around them. Then, out of the chaos, more faces emerged, familiar and haunting, friends from her past, loved ones long gone. They reached out with desperate hands, faces contorted in agony, a surreal testament to the cost of forgotten laughter. Choose. The shadows bellowed, the sounds echoing through Sarah's mind, burrowing deeper. Choose what to let go. The weight of the decision pooled heavy in her chest. The voices churned within her, a cacophony of fear, guilt, love, and loss. As memories and shadows converged, she realized, whatever choice she made would shape their future. What would she sacrifice? For their laughter, for their safety, as the walls of darkness closed in tighter, the impossible truth loomed before her. Would she witness their final moments dissolve into darkness, or would she find a way to untangle them from the suffocating abyss? With a final glance at Lily and Ethan, determination coursed through her veins. This wasn't just a game. It was an ultimatum. And as the shadows drew nearer, a shiver ran down her spine. The next heartbeat could change everything. What awaited them at the brink of that cliff, when shadows and choices collided? Sarah gritted her teeth, ready to confront the dark, willing to uncover the truth no matter the cost. As the shadows converged, pulsating with a menacing energy, Sarah held her breath, every synapse in her body screaming to flee. But standing firm, she felt a rush adrenaline, yes, but something deeper, a fierce protectiveness for her children that ignited an inferno of courage within her. We will not play your sick game. She shouted, her voice cracking yet defiant. For a moment, the shadows faltered, twisting and shrinking back as if struck. Then they surged forward, more aggressive, more pulsing with dark intent. You will play, they snarled, and the air quivered, suffocating her determination. Or you will pay. Keep close. Sarah shouted, pulling Ethan and Lily against her, guarding their fragile forms. The shadows transformed, elongating into grotesque shapes, twisted limbs and gaping mouths grating against her sanity. Mom! Ethan cried, terror leaking from his voice. Stay with me! She yelled, squeezing their hands so tightly her knuckles felt like they might crack. The world dissolved around them, merging and unraveling like a tapestry caught in flames. But then something unthinkable happened. The shadows drew back to form a portal, swirling in a cyclone of darkness, obscured thoughts and memories sucking them in. Come play with us, chirped the haunting voices of the lost children. It's not too late. Remember the laughter? The shadows spread a dissonant laugh, mocking the joy she once had, the days spent in innocence. Images flooded Sarah's mind, her childhood home, sunlit and warm, where laughter had flowed like a river. But now it twisted, grotesque laughter layered with screams. Her heartbeat thundered as she was pulled deeper. Mom, I see my friends. Lily whispered, eyes wide with fear and confusion. The sight of those lost souls, friends she had buried in memory, filled Sarah with a chilling dread. Don't look! Sarah screamed. It's a trick. They want us to join them. But her words got snagged in panic, the fabric of reality fraying around them. The darkness coiled around Lily, tugging at her, as if wanting to drag her into an eternal abyss. "Let her go!" Sarah shouted, rage boiling beneath her skin. Then, in a heartbeat, clarity ignited. "You are not lost," Sarah said, her voice low and steady. "You are memories we choose to remember, not the other way around." She felt the truth rise in indomitable force. "Your fear feeds us," the shadows hissed, frenzy rising in their cacophony. "Embrace your loss. Sacrifice one." Silence. She shot back, bolstered by her ancient resolve. Memories surged, unbroken laughter and sunlight reclaiming her mind. "We will not let you take them." Lily and Ethan clutched tighter, the warmth of their bond igniting a spark of light that broke through the oppressive darkness. The shadows recoiled, screeching, unraveling like threadbare fabric, but just as victory seemed a breath away, the shadows metamorphosed with a feral intensity. "You'll wish you had chosen wisely," they roared, and with one swift movement, they lashed out. Ethan stumbled back, fear stark against his small face. The shadows reached for him, claws elongating, almost primal in their hunger. Instinct kicked in, and Sarah lunged, scooping him up just as a freezing tendril brushed against his ankle. She felt their dreaded pull with every ounce of her being. "We're almost there, together," she said, voice trembling, struggling against the rising tide of despair. The fabric of reality cracked, and the darkness felt like it was melting around them, a seething mass of broken souls thrashing against the limits of their prison. "Choose now," they roared, their voices a thunderstorm of anguish. As Sarah stood against the chaos, unwilling to surrender, the words she had uttered echoed in her mind. "What would you sacrifice?" With shadows clawing at her sanity, she realized the final choice loomed. What would she have to give up to break free? Everything hinged on the next heartbeat. In the depths of that insatiable darkness, as a figure began to emerge, tall, titanic, a familiar face obscured by shadows, a chilling question clawed at her resolve. What if confronting that figure was the key to unraveling this nightmare? But was she ready to face it? The shadows flared, revealing a figure twisted by darkness, but Sarah could see it was a familiar shape, someone she hadn't recognized through the haze of fear. "Mom?" whispered a voice, fragile and uncertain. Her heart stuttered, recognizing the flicker of her own past embodied in front of her. This was her childhood self, a ghost of innocence lost, face pale and eyes wide with lost hope. "Why did you come back?" The young Sarah cried, her voice hauntingly sweet, laced in both sorrow and yearning. "Because I have to save my kids." Sarah found herself replying, every word infused with fiery urgency. "I want to give in to this darkness." "You can't save them by denying the truth," the younger Sarah whispered, shadows wrapping closer, distorting her features. "You have to choose what to let go. Stay away." Sarah screamed, fury boiling in her veins. "You're not real, just a part of this game." But the shadows tightened around her, a whirling mass of confusion and pain. Ethan trembled beside her, and she could feel Lily's small body vibrating with fear. "Mom, I want to go home," came Ethan's faint cry. "Hold on to each other," Sarah shouted, clenching their hands tighter, pushing against the chaos. In that moment, everything shifted. She realized it wasn't merely a choice of sacrifice. It was a decision to confront the fears from within, to accept the pain her past had etched on her soul. "I want to give you my children," she roared at the shadows, her heart swelling with defiance. "But I will give you my fear." As the words escaped her lips, she felt a warmth radiate from her hand to her children's. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in rage. The more she let her fear go, the brighter the light grew. "My love will shield us," she cried, feeling the dark grip weaken as she leaned into it, confronting the echoes of her past, the unfulfilled whispers, the laughter submerged in grief. Symbols of their childhood flared around them, glowing softly in defiance against the darkness. Their favorite toys, echoing laughter, the simple joys of warm summer days. Sarah felt the oppressive weight lift as if she had unveiled the sun. "Mom, I can see it!" Lily shouted with newfound hope, "We can break through." Together, they surged forward, hearts pounding with determination, moving past the swirling shadows. The grotesque faces that had plagued them shattered like glass under the fierce light of their memories. "Let us go," Sarah urged, ripping through the remaining veil of darkness. The shadows shrieked, the cacophony of anguish fading as their collective fears diminished. The corridor shimmered, pulling them toward the bright portal of light ahead. With each step, she could feel the weight of the world's despair lift, the darkness dissipating behind them. They ran together, unified, a family fortified against the silence. The doorway shimmered, illuminating their path toward the vast unknown. Finally, they burst through, tumbling into their living room, sunlight spilling through the windows, the mundane warmth consuming them. Panting and wide-eyed, they collapsed onto the floor. Gasping for air, Sarah looked at her children, their faces glowing with relief and disbelief. "Mom, we did it," Ethan breathed, tears trickling down his cheeks. "We're safe," Lily squeaked, the remnants of fear glistening in her wide eyes. Laughter, pure, joyful laughter, echoed through the room as they huddled together. It felt like a second chance, a promise that they could carve out light from the dark, but Sarah's heart quivered. Shadows lingered, simmering at the edges of their vision, whispers echoing in the back of her mind, a fading memory of fear. "We have to remember," she whispered, clutching her children tightly. "Always remember our strength. We face our fears together." Years later, as the family gathered in the living room, sharing stories, laughter, and warmth, Sarah often found herself gazing at the attic door. The tales of shadows persisted, but now they served as reminders, nestled in their hearts, a bond unbreakable against the midnight chill. "Sometimes," Sarah said quietly, "the darkness feels relentless. But warmth, love, and courage can always slice through it." And as she looked into the eyes of her children, she knew their laughter would always be a beacon against whatever shadows dared to lurk. You need to subscribe now so you won't miss out on more thrilling tales and adventures. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this gripping conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending.